Welcome everyone to this week in Svelte. As you might have seen and spotted, there is a last-minute change in today's changelog because we were about to present a new Svelte router, a library that was presented last week. Unfortunately, it's totally my fault because I should have contacted him earlier, but unfortunately, I forgot to do it, and so he's not around for the moment. But we will definitely get back to the router next week. And so yeah, but we will have luckily Josh is around, and so we will talk about durable objects and a library that is writing and all about he's very much into party server and durable object. So it's pretty cool because I never actually use them and I'm pretty excited to learn about them. But before, obviously, let's go to the usual agenda, which is the changelog. So let's start going over the changelog. And we can see that 4 days ago we published this. This is reduce hydration comments for else if. So, by the way, expect a bit more about this because, recently there was a new addition to the Svelte core team, the Svelte maintainers. Adi Guba, you told me you've seen told me talk me about Adi Guba sometimes in some past episode because he was a very active contributor in recently, and so he's also pretty good. So we decided to have him on board. So happy maintainership, I don't know, to Adi Guba, but also he's very good with hydration stuff, and we are also trying to reduce hydration comments, which is something that it's been bothering a lot of people. I don't think it's really a problem, but let's say if we go to svelte.dev, which is using Svelte, Svelte 5 obviously, and if we inspect element, you can see that there is all these comments inside the code. And obviously, this is not really a problem because, and I don't know if I can zoom in, I think I can't. This is not really a problem because at the end of the day, it's just, it's used by Svelte to hydrate your components, and you don't need to read them at the end of the day. You never read the code that you actually ship to production because it will be minified. Even JavaScript is basically unreadable. But there are some use cases where having too much, a too big payload, and by the way, this does not affect size too much because after gzip, basically all these comments are shrunk down to one. And yeah, okay. Eric Smith is saying, I saw a thing on YouTube for a video about a new Svelte 5 router, and now I can't find it. Unfortunately, my fault, but I was too late to contact the maintainer of the new router, so we will have him on the show probably next week or the week after. So, but we will talk about that. Today we will talk also about durable object. So what I was saying is that we are trying to work to reduce the number of comments, not because it's important, but sometimes people expressed some frustration with it, specifically because some providers does not allow you to upload an index.html which is greater than a certain amount. So for some people, pre-gzip size actually matters. So we are trying to reduce them as much as possible. This is one small step: reduce hydration comments for else if. So We also had a patch which is disallow bind group to snippet parameters, and this is it was a weird bug, but basically, so you know that you can bind group. I almost never use bind group, but you can technically use it. A lot of people, I think, are using it, and bind group as a certain constraint to it. Specifically, let's say that I can do group, for example. If you have a series of checkbox, input type is equal to checkbox, bind group, like this, and let's say that you do value is equal to and let's say that we have B, C, and D, like this. And if I do json.stringify group, you can see that whenever I select something, it's adding something to that thing. Now, this is fine. Obviously, you can do it. I'm not a big fan of this thing, but it's up to you. And but the thing that basically it was happening is that if you did something like this, and you create a snippet, I don't know, input, and you passed in the group like this, and then you did something like this, you can see that now you are getting an error. And the reason is because you are trying to bind to the group, which is actually like this should have been something like group.value. So before you could do something like this. Now it's an error after that PR. And the reason why you cannot do this is because under the hood, if you take a look at the JS output, we are storing the binding group as a separate array, and then we are passing in that binding group to the input inside here. Like we are passing in this binding group because we need to store the information about which element is binding to which group. And this obviously means that it needs to be inside a single component. This is also why you cannot have binding group through different components. Like if you move this input inside a separate component, you cannot bind group to it. That's the reason why. And we didn't have this validation for snippet, but this was creating problems, and now it is not anymore because you cannot do it. Make dialog element and role interactive. This is for accessibility. This was done to solve a problem with Astro, actually. So if you were using Astro with Svelte, Astro recently started using the props ID, new rune, that allow you to have a specific ID, because obviously like they want to have a specific ID for every island. And the problem is there was no prefix, and basically they are using multiple I suppose they are using multiple Svelte runtime for each island, because obviously each island should be able to like load Svelte by itself. And this means, however, that without an ID prefix, they were basically not able to differentiate between the different islands. So if we were using a Svelte component within Astro and using the props ID, the props ID, like you could have multiple props ID that return the same ID for different island, and this was a problem because they are also using the ID to register the event listener, for example. And so now when you render some function, so like when you import render from Svelte, you can also specify an ID prefix so that when you render that component, that ID is prepended to the props ID, and you can differentiate between multiple islands. Pretty cool. This is also pretty interesting and pretty. It's a nice little like chore, switch, acorn TypeScript plugin. And the reason why it's instead very interesting is because we have a brand new repo. So if I go to github.com/sveltejs, which is the organization, we now have a brand new repo here, which is Acorn TypeScript. So this was a library that was developed by, let me see, by Tyrell Who, and it's technically still a possible library. And we were using this before to allow you to use TypeScript within Svelte components. Unfortunately, this is not super well maintained. There were multiple issues, and we opened the issue here, but I think the maintainer just got bored of it, and so we forked it. And now we are gonna maintain this, which is a bit more of a maintenance burden on us, but it's fine because this way we have more control over bugs that are stemming from this library. And for the moment, as you can see, Simon is doing the God works and maintaining this package by itself. Obviously, like, everybody will help, but yeah, pretty cool. And now we are actually switching to this. And by the way, if you used the Svelte AST output in one of your library, please check that this doesn't break to you. Like, this is fine because like the AST output is not actually subject to versioning, to Semver, but this technically made a small breaking change to the AST output. So if you are using the AST output in any way, please check that after Svelte 5.22.1, your library is still working perfectly fine. Fix correctly set is updating before flashing root effect. This was a very small bug, but basically unknown derived specifically. You heard me talk about this a lot of times, and it's yet again creating some small problem. I mean, a love-hate relationship with unknown derived, because on one end it's pretty cool that, like, the whole runtime can basically skip a bunch of work if you are using unknown derived. On the other end, it's very easy to cause bugs, and so it's pretty annoying. But this was fixed. So this was also interesting. Run effect roots in tree order. So basically, like, you know that you can create a new root, right? Inside, you can do $effect.root, and this basically create a new root effect. So every effect needs to have a parent. So in case of components, for example, every component is a sort of effect. So every effect that you create inside a component is actually attached to a root effect. And this is why, for example, if you want to just use an effect inside a file, you need to wrap it within an effect root, because otherwise you will get an effect orphan. And the reason why you need to do that is because every effect takes care of cleaning every resource that is used by every effect that is a child of him, of its. I don't know. I'm not speaking English very well, sorry. But the point is, there are effect roots. There are basically a different kind of effect, which are very lightweight. They don't have much information in them, and they get cleaned up after everything, like after the page unload. But they takes care of every effect that is created within them. And the point is that if you create an effect root inside a component, that effect root is a separate root, basically. So the reactive graph is not shared between the two. And this was causing some problem, because if you were reading for the first time, if you were creating a a state from a store with the toStore utility. So it's something that you can use to convert a store to a stateful variable. And since you were by doing that, basically, inside the function, we were using a create root, basically. And this was creating a problem because on the destruction, so on the tear down of an effect inside a component, we were also doing registering a tear down to clean up every store. It's a bit convoluted, sorry. But the point is, before this fix, the effect root inside the toStore were not being cleaned up. And so now basically effect root runs in 3 order. So if you create an effect root inside an effect, it will be run before the effect that was created after that. So this fixed this bug. This also never deduplicate expression in templates. I don't think I've seen this PR, so I actually don't know what this is about. Yeah, okay, so there's probably... Yeah, okay. So basically, we were doing some optimization, and so if you were using a function, for example, inside the template, and if you were basically every expression, we were trying to deduplicate them. So instead of calling the function multiple times, we were just storing them in a derived and access the value. But obviously, as you can see from the issue, this was creating problem because some function, some expression might not be pure. So in this case, not pure, but actually idempotent. So this function always return a different value. And so, as Rich said, it's a shame to lose this optimization, but it doesn't make a difference to the vast majority of app, and correctness come first. And I agree. Let me see if I think there is some question. Once you've said to stay away adding to root effect if possible, the recommendation is still valid, or this patch change we can be more relaxed? No, I think effect.root is still something that is very much a niche. Whenever possible, you should try to avoid effects in general. And so this also means that whenever possible, you should try to avoid effect.roots. So that's a very niche use case just for something that I honestly cannot think about a situation. Probably the toStore function is the only real use case for effect.root. Because most of the time you just want to stay within the current effect tree and the current reactivity graph. So I would still be very if you need to reach for effect.root, maybe start to think about your code and see if you can actually remove it, because it's very likely that you can. Then we have fix memoize CLSX calls. So again, when you're setting an attribute, for example, if you are calling a function, we actually memoize that call, because and this is different because this is in template, literally in templates. This is different because we try to memoize if you have a call to a function, and this means that but we were not doing it for the function that we introduced, the CLSX. So if you try to, if you had an array passed into a class, we, under the hood, transformed that array to a call to CLSX, and it was not memoized, so it was called over and over again, even if the parameter will not change. And so now, instead, it's actually doing it. Respect Svelte in your iteration attribute change on element with spread attributes. Okay, so probably this was not you can ignore iteration attribute changed. and this is a warning that you will get at runtime if one of the attribute, specifically I think it's just for the source of images and the title, I think some attribute. I don't think we throw this warning for every attribute, but the point is, for example, if you have an EMG source and the value change between the server and the client, we don't want to change that attribute on the client. So we don't repair it. Otherwise, this will trigger a second call, basically, which is not ideal. So we just throw a warning. And if you wanted to ignore this warning, it was not working if you were spreading attributes. And now it is. Always use set attribute when setting style. This was actually a kind of a minor thing that I think Adiguba made, because basically this is very fun, but basically in the DOM, when you want to, so in the DOM, when you set an attribute, when you set style, it will actually set the attribute to the actual value that you set. While if you set the style through element.style.something, for example, it will kind of change the value. So for example, if you set div.style.background to hashtag F00, which is red, the actual value that is being set is actually RGB 255,0,0 for some reason. Like the browser actually changed it, and I think this was to make sure that like it's actually unique, like so that if you use style or if you are setting it on the server, it's actually the same value. I think I can't remember if that's it. The thing. This is another optimization made from Adiguba. And this, like at the end of the day, this doesn't really change for the user. It's something that make the code base a bit better, and it will be easier to work with style directive inside the code base. We also have another question: is there a way to make effect to run only one time without any dependency? And the answer is use on mount, and it's true. It's not deprecated. But it's actually much easier. Like you can just wrap everything inside on track. So let me show you. Svelte.dev/playground. So if you don't want to use on mount, I mean, it's fine. You can actually use on mount if you want. But if you want to use effect, you can actually do from Svelte. You can import on track from Svelte. And then you can do $sign effect, and then you can untrack everything, and then you run your code. So basically this is on mount. Like on mount is literally this. So yeah, you can just do this, and whatever dependency you run inside here. So if we have let count is equal to $state 0, and let's say that we console.log count like this, and then we do button on click, and we do count ++, and we do count here. As you can see, we are logging count the first time, but then we don't the rest of the time. So yeah. Using effect needs some good reason and a cleanup in return. Yeah, I agree. Most of the time, like if you need to use effect, please think twice and think if you are actually need effect. Especially if you are reassigning state within effect, that's very bad. Effect should be just used if you want to synchronize between Svelte reactivity system and some external system that does not have that reactivity, like that does not understand reactivity. So, for example, let's say that you have a canvas, and let's bind these to canvas, for example. So if you have a situation like this, the Canvas API does not understand Svelte reactivity, obviously. So you need to like manually do it. And so what you can do is inside an effect, you can do let context is equal canvas dot get context 2D, I guess. And then let's say that you do context dot fill style is equal to let's say color, and let's do this. I just want to show you a valid example of an effect. And let me do input type color bind value color like this. So if you have something like this, and let's say that you do ctx dot fill rect from 0 to canvas dot width canvas dot height. So in this case, we are basically filling the color, like the whole canvas, with the color. And the problem is when you are changing the color, like this, as you can see, is actually working now. But basically, like, this needs to be imperative code because the canvas has no way to understand the Svelte reactivity. And so this is the case where you actually need an effect, because we are basically running this code over and over again whenever the color changes. And we need to do actually this, because if we don't do this, there's no way for the canvas to know that the color changed. So this is a valid use case for an effect. Obviously, you can, in the future, you might use the attach keyword, so we can even remove this use case for effect. But like, imagine that this is not a canvas and it's a D3 class, for example. You can do that too. Okay, let's switch back to this, and let's go back to let's see, and this is brand new 2 hours ago. Skip log if contains state if only logging literals. So you might have seen, basically, if you are logging some state within so if I do console.log, oh, I messed up. If I do console.log color here, whoop, sorry, you can see that in the JS output, maybe it's just for proxies. I can't remember how to trigger it, but the point is, there was a ways like log if contains state was a function that was added. Oh no, actually is only on dev mode. That's why, yeah. So as you can see here, I'm logging color, but the actual console log output is log if contains state, log get color. And the reason why we add this thing here is because when you're logging state, proxied state, the browser will actually log the proxy and not the state. And so to prevent this function basically transform your proxy and snapshot it so that you actually see the value that you want to log. By the way, you should not use console log. Please use $inspect because it's much better. But obviously, if you have something like this, there's no reason to really like wrap it in a function. And so this is the new patch here. If you are only logging literals, we don't wrap it. Add closed by property on HTML dialog attribute, and fix null and warning for local handlers. So if you were using a null handler for local handlers, so for not delegated handlers, it was throwing an error before, and now it is not. It's just ignoring it, and it's also throwing a warning. So that's it for Svelte. Let's switch to SvelteKit and let's see what we have. Correctly preload data on mouse down on touch start if code was preloaded on hover. So as you can assume, I also talked about this last week, but basically SvelteKit is doing some pretty nice stuff, because when you hover or touch down on a link, it will start to preload the data and the code. And I think it was broken in the sense that if you preloaded the hover, the code, it was not also preloading the data. Include root layout and error nodes even when apps have only pre-rendered page. Okay. So if you pre-render every page, the root layout and the error nodes will still be included. Include universal load asset as server asset. Correct navigation history with hash router and ensure load function are rerun on user changes to URL hash. So there was a problem, a bug with the hash router, where load function were not rerun on the back button of the browser. So this is something that we shipped for Advanced Svelte, and it's basically a way for you to not use the actual URL, but you can just use the pound, so the hash router, which is one of the OG ways to do it. Allow async reroute. This is a pretty new change, and it's a welcoming one, because now you can actually asynchronously change the router. So the reroute hook is something that you can use to basically make sure that if you, like, this is basically a very good hook for internationalization library, because this way, if you have a route that is /yan/+page.svelte, you can reroute it to point to the same +page.svelte, even if it's /fr/+page.svelte, basically. And provide normalized URL helper. So new helper, pretty cool. Let's see. Sorry, I'm a bit. New publish for SV, detect package manager asynchronously, add keys to each block. Oh, this is probably because of the ESLint plugin. Pass schema for better type generation, cool. Adds on executed in the wrong order in certain circumstances, and it was fixed. Svelte to TSX, take other snippet into account when checking for hoistability. So this was a series of bugs. Basically, to get auto-completion for you, and to get basically to provide you with auto-completion and like IntelliSense and stuff like that, we convert your Svelte component into a TypeScript file and then use the TypeScript language server to type check that. And there were some bugs, specifically other snippet. If you were using other snippet within a snippet, it was still considered hoistable, and it was like not actually hoisted in the code, but it was hoisted in the language server, so you were getting a weird error. Disambiguate render in module script. So this was also pretty fun. Basically, to do this, when we create this, we create a render function that then TypeScript type check. So this meant that for the longest time, if you tried to import or to create a function inside the module script that was called render, it will show an error saying, hey, you are you receiving me? Because I think I get an error from YouTube. I don't know. Please let me know if we are still live. And now you can actually create a function called render in the module script. Properly transform props ID when props is assigned to props. So this was a very weird bug, but basically when you have something that is assigned, like $props.id, if you were trying to, like, you can technically do this, right? You can do const props is equal $props, like this. this is doable. This was problematic when you also used const id is equal to $props.id, because this to Svelte seemed like you were actually using props as a store here and here, which is not actually true. So we had to special case this case. Blah blah blah, correctly handled unclosed tag with the same tag type tag inside. This was very wild. Basically, like if you opened a p tag and you had another p tag inside, it was transforming the code wrongly. Handle booleanish popover. Cache file during emit DTS. Pretty cool. And this was also basically the same. Highlight type annotation. Oh, we have a bunch of stuff. Highlight type annotation in const tag. Take other snippet. Yeah, basically a lot of these are basically the same PR that actually changed a lot of stuff. So and a lot of ESLint plugins Svelte. V3 was actually requiring a higher node version that was actually needed, and so we like lowered that requirement. And yeah, I think that's it. So let's actually switch to a couple of announcements, and then we can move to the actual let me actually go to my control room here. Yeah, okay. I was, for a second I thought our guest was not there. So but it is actually there. So let me quickly go over some announcement. Specifically, you already heard it a lot of time. Svelte Summit Spring 2025, it's getting closer and closer. Just 2 months actually. Oh, I'm so excited. I cannot wait to be there. And there will be workshop the day before. So if you didn't book your trip again, the day before on May 7th on One Cowork Cathedral, there will be the workshop. Is organized by my company, which is also co-organizing the Svelte Summit, and it will be held by me. So if you want to talk with about Svelte 5 with me, please join us to this workshop. And also, and this kind of point me to another small announcement, because if you follow us on Blue Sky, and I suppose even on Twitter, I'm not sure because I left Twitter, but we started actually publish some tiny bit about the speakers. So if you want to know more about speakers and about the talk that they will talk about, please follow sveltesociety.dev on Blue Sky, and you will get, I guess, daily. I don't know if they are publishing daily tiny bits about the speakers. Please head to this PR. So there is a sort of annoying bug that was lingering from time to time, and this is actually a problem that every signal-based framework has, and I want to show you very quickly. But basically, let's say that you have a script tag and you accept a prop like this, and you have, I don't know, count, right? And let's say that you're using TypeScript, lang is equal ts, and you specify that the count is number, so it cannot be undefined. And then you do something like $effect, and on return you console.log count, like this. And obviously, like, I'm doing this example with a number, but this could be an object, for example. It could be something else. The point is, TypeScript tells you that this is a number. And so when you are using the component, from component like this, state 0, count, and then we can do button on click, and we can do count is equal to undefined. Now, since this can be undefined, nullify. Since this can be undefined, I cannot pass it to the component, right? So I can do if count is different from null, I want to render the component and I want to pass count, right? Now, this is pretty cool, right? And let me actually show count just for... So this works, TypeScript is happy, blah, 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 blah. But now what would happen when I nullify? I'm actually console logging undefined. And the reason is because if you look at the compiled code, when we are creating the component, we are just creating a getter that reads the value. So when count becomes null, the component will start to run the undefined, like the tear down function. And this means that this count will actually be the already undefined value. This is pretty counterintuitive, and it worked differently in Svelte 4. And so in this PR, we actually change how effect tear down work at all. So before, if you were doing something like this, previous value, and you console logged previous is equal to value inside the tear down, before this would have been true, but usually is false. Like it could have been true, but usually is false, because you will always get the updated value. And you will only get the current value on the last tear down, basically. Exactly this. So now we are actually changing this so that this will always be true. So the value that you get in the teardown will always be the same value when the effect firstly run. And this is actually some React stuff. So if you did something like this, for example, chat will be undefined by the time it runs. So basically we are changing how this works. And this was basically triggered by this very by this post that there were multiple issues, but this post was actually made on the Hacker News front page. And by the way, we were trying to fix this bug for months, but it was pretty difficult to do. And so what we plan to do is actually change how teardown works. So now, again, the value that you read inside the teardown will be the same that you read the first time that you run the effect. This is technically a breaking change if you are using this actual functionality. So please go to the PR, because we think that this is actually a bug fix, because it's pretty unintuitive and it's not documented. So personally, I think that this is a bug fix. But please, if you have anything to say, go to the PR to let us know. Okay, that's it for real this time. So let's switch to actual to Josh. And I think, Josh, you need to share your screen again. Yeah, perfect. Let me switch to my guest page. And here, Josh, he was developing a bunch of stuff around durable object with Cloudflare and Party Server, which is a way to interact, to communicate with WebSockets and stuff like that. So he's here to present his library, and also after he presents his library, we can talk a bit about durable object, because I cannot wait for to learn more about them.
Okay, cool. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh. So yeah, like you said, been messing around with Cloudflare durable object, specifically with Party Server. And I've been trying to look at how it can integrate with Svelte. So I actually have these slides from a video I created recently. So it probably is helpful to go over this to give you a general idea of what Party Server is. So it's really this cool thing that I think the use cases are like obviously games, which are multiplayer. So it's basically anytime you have shared state that you want many people to access that state. If you think about how hosting works nowadays, like think about let's say Vercel or a lot of times when we host Svelte, it's either as a dedicated server, right? Where the downside to a dedicated server is when there's no requests, you're basically just wasting that CPU. Then we have hosting like Vercel or Netlify where it's cloud functions, so you only get charged when the function is being used, right? But it's not great when you have many people sharing the state because it means that every request has to be recreated. Like imagine a request has to query the database again. If you have like 100 people all trying to do that same request, you're kind of wasting processing power. So party server is a way to sort of share state. And I think it helps for games. It helps for collaboration tools. It also helps for multiple users. Like if you have multi devices, imagine you have an app where you can use it on the phone and the desktop and the tablet at the same time. Imagine like a slideshow where I want to control the slides from my phone. So there's some shared state. This is where I think party server shines, and then you can have your Svelte app to do the UI to render the UI part. So basically, yeah, party server is just Cloudflare. It's basically just a framework for Cloudflare durable objects. And what a durable object is, it's this really cool thing that it basically is like this little piece of code with state that runs inside Cloudflare. And remember, Cloudflare is like this huge network of data centers, right? So you can have this piece of code run, it can be running, let's say it's in LA, and then it will be, so it can be on an edge, so it could be running on the edge in LA. Another durable object could be running inside the network in New York or Japan. So basically you can keep your state and your code right next to the user. And it's also designed for long running requests. So where you have WebSockets essentially. So it's very well. And I think now Svelte is also, we're doing some stuff, I think in SvelteKit around WebSockets as well. So it's definitely an area to learn about, I think right now. I think it's really cool also in that, imagine like a chat room, a chat type app, like Slack or something, where you have some people chatting in LA, some people chatting in Japan. All that code and stuff will live right next to them so that the latency is much faster. And the way they model their setup in party servers, they call this thing a room. You can almost think of it like chat, like Discord. It's like a room with a bunch of client connections all connected to some shared state. And you could actually have many rooms, of course. Imagine a chat like Discord. We have here's the Svelte room, here's the React room. So you could have as many rooms, and you don't have to call them rooms. Like you could call this. Imagine if it was a game. This might be the chessboard number 1. This is chessboard number 2. So that's basically the concept of a room. It's basically a bunch of people all sharing one piece of state. And they have this nice key value storage, so you can basically change the state. That's going to happen on the edge. They also have now SQLite, which I haven't shown here, but you can actually do SQL, and that also gets shared. It gets kept on the edge. It's really sick. One of the really cool parts about it is that it has hibernation. So like imagine a chat room and nobody's chatting. So what happens is the code will automatically get hibernated. And so that means you're not paying a lot of money when you're not using that execution. So in some ways that's similar, I think, to like cloud functions, where like if there's no requests in the app, you're not paying for it, right? So that's kind of important. But the cool thing is the next time somebody chats, it's going to wake up, and it's going to wake up with all its state, with all the storage that it had before. So yeah, I think that's a really neat feature. And also has alarms. So basically you can say like, do something later, and that will actually wake it up from hibernation. So imagine a good example of this would be like, imagine like an analytics type app where you have a lot of data of events, like maybe page views, but you only want to send updates on a schedule, like maybe every 10 seconds. So you can use alarms to change how you send information out. The cool thing is with party server, the dev server, it's just Vite, which is really cool. And deployment, simple, just Cloudflare. It uses the Wrangler CLI. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but just you can say Wrangler deploy, and that will send your code up. And I can show you that so one of the things I built is this template called Party v Svelte. And what you can do is if you run this command here, you're basically using the Cloudflare CLI with this template. It will create a Svelte app for you with a party server setup. And then when you're ready to deploy, you can just say pnpm run deploy, and that'll send that up. Now I could show you some demos. Like one thing I built with it was this poll thing. And by the way, Paulo, feel free to ask questions. But like the idea is that imagine like in Twitter or now Blue Sky. I think everybody's off Twitter. Imagine you have a poll, and imagine that just to set it up here. Imagine that I have a new window open as well, so you can see the real time element of it. And so this is running right now in Cloudflare, and this is a Svelte app. And if I say Apple here, you're going to see it doesn't update right away because I have it going on a schedule. Now it just updated. So every 10 seconds, it sends out all the updates. So if I do like a bunch of updates, refresh here, and I'll try to do it faster than, so basically it doesn't, so for performance reasons, right? Imagine you had 1,000 people all changing the value at the same time. You wouldn't want to send each update immediately. You want to kind of send them and batch them, right? Maybe do it every 10. So that's where alarms can be really helpful. Another thing that I built is I built a couple things with this. Let me see this one. Wait, go back to this here. I built a tic-tac-toe game. Let's see here. I can run this. So this is it's just a template, and I created some shared state for a tic-tac-toe game, which is running in Svelte. I don't know if it even works, but let's see. Sorry, probably should open two windows. Refresh. Is it working? Oh yeah, I have to. I didn't build a like a lobby, where you sign up. Really, you should have authentication. So I did it just using the URL to say player X. Okay, so now I'm player X. I open another one here. I will call this guy player O. Did it work? No, Mikey. Okay, yeah. So now I have two players. So now I go X, and so yeah. So now you see that. So this is a Svelte app just using a CSS grid, and behind the scenes there's some shared state, and it works very well with runes. I can kind of show you. I'm just trying to think of what's the best way to show you. Maybe the best way is to actually create to use the template and create a project from scratch, just to show you what the code actually looks like. Let me just go here. I'll paste this in, do some live coding and tempt the gods. Oh yeah, already it's not. Paste. Okay, so what should we call this project? TWIS, maybe party server TWIS. Okay. Let's give that a second. And installing dependencies usually takes like 10, 15 seconds maybe. Installing Wrangler. Doing its thing. And so once this is done, we're going to have I haven't yet figured out how to use Svelte Kit. So it's more just like a Svelte project with Vite. I think in theory it should be doable. I don't know, Paulo, you may have some thoughts there. I wonder if it's just a matter of an adapter. And we need to have like an adapter that, like a Cloudflare adapter that understands party server. I don't know. We might have to look at it.
I don't know. We should probably take a look. And also, by the way, I don't know if, because currently there is also a testing phase of the ability to have a native WebSocket, to specify WebSocket endpoints through SvelteKit, just like get endpoint. You can specify an upgrade endpoint, which will be called by WebSocket. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's required for this to work, because I think under the hood, they are actually doing stuff under the hood by themselves, right?
I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing in the node adapter, I'm guessing they've added some stuff in there to make that happen. I don't
No,
know that for
actually,
sure
like
though, but
that. I mean, the nice thing is that like the upgrade. I actually haven't looked at the PR in that detail, but I think in like at the end of the day, adapters can specify how they want to use the upgrade hook. So inside Node, they will just add the a way to upgrade inside the Node server. But I guess like for some, I don't know, serverless that also support WebSocket. I don't know if they exist, but
right, serverless won't. Right. I think one difference here also is that I think what the approach that SvelteKit is taking is more like general.
yeah.
I think that here, party server, they're taking more an approach where they're giving you primitives specifically for handling rooms. So they're kind of like building state management, let's say, on the server, where it's like it's there's tools and utilities to help you, for example, broadcast. Like let's say you want to update many people,
Yeah.
or you want to send to a specific person, or you want to tag. There's a lot of I can show you. So here's basically the Vite app set up, and you'll see in here if I look at the tree, you'll see that there is a worker folder. So that's where the party server is living, and then there's the SRC with your good old app.svelte. And if I show you app.svelte, let's look at that first. It's using a party socket, this is actually very similar to WS, the built-in socket. The difference is just that it reconnects automatically. So if a connection is lost, it'll reestablish it. And you pass in the room. So here, imagine it could be the room name. I don't know if it was a chat server. Maybe this is the support room, or maybe if it was like a game, it might be ID, some ID here. That's up to you to do. And then, like we said, you have many what they call parties. It's just it's like collections of rooms. So imagine in a chat app, there's a chat party. Maybe there's another party for payments. I don't know. That could be its whole other branch. Yeah. So you're able to have multiple. And all we do is we have a rune, right? So we have our state here, and we handle the event message, and we just update the state, and then it's regular Svelte, right? It's just your UI will automatically update. I can show you now the other side of this, which is the worker server. And so right now it's a very simple worker that's just echoing, just saying hello from server. So it receives a message. So it's basically a class that inherits from party server. And here I handle a message coming in, and I just say, like, we could actually change it to be an echo server by simply doing this. Here we can say, just turn back out the message. So now anything sent from the client will just be sent back, So that would be a simple echo. Another common practice would be like broadcasting. You might want to say, if you want to send to everybody connected, you would say broadcast like that. And then you could broadcast whatever you want. A lot of times also it's common to use JSON here, and to have like some object that you send. Actually, what I found super useful is, Rich's project dvalue.
Yeah.
It actually works really well.
Yeah.
You can use dvalue, and then you can send maps, dates, all the stuff that JSON doesn't work well with. It's another thing you should probably know, I think people watching should know, is that you may have heard the term Party Kit. So Party Kit was the original version of this. Then they got bought by Cloudflare. And so in the new version, which is they're calling Party Server, it's like it is going to get merged as like Party Kit V2 or something, at some point. So if you're building something new, probably Party Server is the way to go, as the Vite integration is much better. The old version, they used to have their own CLI, and their CLI only had support for React, all their own custom thing. Now it's just Wrangler.
By the way, it seems like the story of every framework. Like they start with their own CLI and then they discover Vite, and let's switch to Vite.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
and by the way, let's run this.
CLI, and then we were kind of the first to switch to Vite. But Remix, for
Right.
example, did the same thing, and now Partikit, Tailwind, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to go, right?
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with Veet. No one ever got fired for using Veet.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can run this. So yeah, so let's see. I ran the dev server here. So I'm on. Okay, here I am. Okay, so all it's not doing anything much. It's just sending. See here, it sent this message, "Hello from client," and you see it came back, "Hello from client," because we're just echoing it out, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy. I don't know if I should show you maybe a more complicated. I'm just trying to think what's a good example to show a code base of. What's a good code base that I have that I can show you? I mean, I could show you the poll code base. Oh, actually, this is another example I built. This one, you might recognize this. Let's open this up. Why is the UI? The UI is weird. Hang on, let me run that again. This one I built using Turbo. So Turbo Repo.
Yeah.
So I put the SvelteKit app separate from the PartyKit stuff, Party Server stuff. What port is it running on? It's not showing me.
Generally, always go with PMPM.
Yeah, oh, right. I guess you're probably right. I could have done that. Why is it not? It's not showing me the port that it's running on. Let's try again. Oh, is it? I'm going to just guess that it's somewhere here. Localhost 5173. Yeah. So basically, what I built was this. Let me open up another window here. I don't know if any of you guys use WhatsApp, but basically, you can like, it's just a chat. You type. Why is it not? I think there's an issue. Bug. Hello. Yeah. So I can type. So all this is actually very, very simple. All it's doing is you have a room, right? Mm-hmm. The state is an array of messages. When I send this, I send a message to the server saying whatever this user, and then it just broadcasts. So it handles on message, and then it just broadcasts it to everybody. Now, one other pattern that I found super useful is that you can, like, imagine here when I start typing, you wanted to, I can't remember how I did this. I even remember what I think it was ID equals test. That's not it. Shit, I don't remember the code, but basically, like imagine, when you're typing in what's in a lot of chat apps, it'll say like somebody's typing, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very common thing is that you have a map. You have basically a bunch of IDs for each user, and you have some state. So imagine that when I'm typing, we send a message to the server saying, user started typing.
Yeah,
I can actually show you the code. It might be useful to see that. What is this? So CD packages. Sorry, apps. CD apps. CD client. Let's see here what I did. Page. Svelte, I'm guessing. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I'm handling on typing. Yeah, so I'm handling here somewhere there's an input probably or a text area. Input. Yeah, input. That's it. Yeah, so I have an input here, and where am I handling on typing? Oh yeah, I'm definitely handling it. Yeah, because I show it. And another thing to mention, it actually, remember how I showed you the party socket? A very useful pattern is to have a Svelte class, a reactive class. So like here, you see on the top, I have this thing room.svelte. All that is I'm wrapping the party socket. So instead of having the socket in the component, all the reactivity is put somewhere else. And that works really well. So I think that, let me see, SRC. Room.svelte. Right. So in here, somewhere in here. Sorry, I don't really remember this code that well. Yeah. So, okay, right. So when something starts typing, I send a message to the server that they're typing. And then the server will broadcast out. Let me see. Server. So the server has a map, and so this is the server, the party server.
Mm-hmm.
In here, you see there's a map of strings. So that's the ID basically, and
Mm-hmm.
the Boolean of true or false whether they're typing. So basically, it has that state for each user, and then somewhere in here there's a message. So it handles the message, right? And somewhere another common pattern is you'll see like a case statement in here or a switch statement, sorry, in here, where you're switching between different types of messages. So here I have one type of message called chat. I have another type called typing, and I just set, you know, the I know the sender ID, and then I just set, you know, true or false. So when they stop typing, they just send a message false,
Yeah.
and then I can broadcast that out to everybody here. So you see here, and then I send a message to everybody. Okay, this guy's typing, or this guy stopped typing.
Yeah.
So that's a very common, like,
And again, I think like this very much showcase one of the strengths of runes, which is, as you've said, that you
Mhm.
can actually just like put all the reactivity in a separate class and be like basically just update those values. And I think another very interesting bit
Yeah.
is because like actually one of my first projects, my first side projects were actually that I did in React. Uh, was using WebSockets, and obviously like it was nice because you can connect to a WebSocket, and when you receive the broadcast you just set the state and the UI updates. But obviously that was very like in React it was very much more like I needed to be very like attentive to what I was updating, because setting the state could just render the whole thing, while with runes, even if you reset the state to the same value, that single bit will not re-render, which is very interesting. So you can actually be more like free to do
Right.
whatever you want. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think they fit very well together from what I'm seeing. Like it's basically, you could almost think of it as like a state store that's, you know, shared, you know, like a rune is like a piece of state that's shared on the client, and like party server is like a piece of state that's shared between many clients, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's really cool. Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. Yeah, for sure. Definitely, we should drop a link to this thing.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead and just run this on your machine and like play with it. It's really cool. What you can build. Some of the things that I've been trying to build with it. One is I wanted to build like a shared timer where you can have imagine like a Pomodoro. You know, you want to work for 25 minutes. And I want the timer on all my devices. You know, I want it to be on my phone, on my tablet. When the alert comes up, I want everything to show it. You know, maybe even my watch. So this would be perfect for that, because you could have a party server, right? That the state is whether the alarm is running or not, and you could even have it hibernate. You can say like you can set an alarm that says, "Wake up the party server," you know, in 10 minutes or 25 minutes when the Pomodoro ends. So you won't even pay for hosting while the whole thing is happening. You just pay at the beginning and at the end, and and then the timer could run on your own machine, basically.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. One of my party party apps that I've been trying to build.
And I think like this is something that like it's pretty cool that you get all of these basically for free on Cloudflare. Like this is a pretty complex, like building something like this yourself is not that easy. Like you need to keep track of like rooms and connections and store all the sockets and clean that up, and like it's not super easy to do. And the fact that you are just basically one package away to do all of this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And I think my understanding of like what they're doing behind the scenes is like they have a way to keep sockets open. So they have Cloudflare has something internally where they're managing the WebSockets. It's almost like a router for WebSockets, where they can sleep a durable object and then wait, the next time a message comes in on the socket, they'll wake up that durable object, and they'll wake it up in the closest edge. So if it changed, like if it before it was being used heavily in the US and now it goes to sleep and it wakes up, and now somebody from Japan is trying to access it, it'll wake up and it'll be migrated to the Japanese data center, which is really cool. So it'll always kind of like try to go to the place where it's.
I have no idea how to do something like this.
It is
like, I can't even fathom how to start doing something like this. Yep. Okay.
The other thing that I found though is it also brings up. Yeah, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I was wrapping up, but I think like if you have something else interesting to say, I want to hear it all.
No, I think just one last thing I'd maybe leave on is that it does start to bring up questions about, let's say, local first, because a lot of times, like when you have many people trying to access the same state, you need to think about performance, right? You need to think about not updating, not sending too many messages. Like you can't have every single event of one user becoming updates to thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
So you start have to think about how you batch updates. And when you start batching updates, you get to a place where you need, imagine you're going to batch an update. So you're not going to see the update. The user's not going to see imagine like the poll I showed you, right? You can't send everybody the update every time the poll changes, right? So you have to batch it, let's say every 60 seconds, but that means the user won't see any change. They'll hit the UI and they won't see anything change. So you get into optimistic stuff where you do have to have some shared logic that can also run on the client. So just to be aware of that. Like if you're going to think about performance, local first will be an issue for sure.
Yeah. And by the way, like we actually got an answer from Milos, say when would you use party server and when something like zero sync. And I think the two are kind of separate in the sense that like party server is what is allowing you to communicate with a durable object, which basically you can think of as a WebSocket server. And zero sync is like the engine that is doing the local first thing. So like you update the value and the zero sync is what is storing the value inside IndexedDB, but also syncing with the server. And I think they are actually using WebSocket under the hood, probably. Or I mean, you can probably set it up to set it up like to use WebSocket, and they will probably broadcast that to the other people too. But I think like the concept behind is a little different because. But you can, probably you can even use the two together in some way. And if it's not possible, now, it will definitely be in the future, because I can see a world where you are doing optimistic update on the client and doing all the local first stuff, and then you are broadcasting your changes through durable objects through party server.
Okay, yeah, I'm not so familiar with it. I know Scott Talinsky, I think, has done some stuff in Svelte around zero, right?
Yeah,
might be worth talking to him and seeing what. Yeah, super cool. A lot of cool WebSocket stuff happening.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Josh, for joining in last minute. It was a very very interesting talk, and like durable object is something that I definitely want to look more into. And thank you guys for sticking in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed this week in Svelte. And see you guys next week. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.